Welcome back to Nature's Corner. My name is Erin Shaw. I'm a park naturalist with Ohio Department of Natural Resources. On today's show, we're going to be talking about aquaponics. Jonas Kitchen is our guest speaker for today, and Jonas has volunteered at the Nature Center for a couple years, and he's the one that actually showed me how to do this. So Jonas, thank you for being on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me, Erin. It's an interesting experience. There's a lot of misconceptions and a lack of information when it comes to aquaponics and the possibilities that are present.
Okay, so let's start with what is aquaponics?
So aquaponics is commonly confused with hydroponics or aquaculture. Hydroponics being the growing of plants in water, aquaculture being growing aquatic things in water, so farming fish. Aquaculture is mixing both of those. So we're farming fish and we're using the fish to also feed our plants that we're growing in it. It's a very, very efficient farming system. It makes great use of the available space and resources, and it's come a long way in recent years, and it continues to gain a very strong following.
Okay, so this is something I could try at home, and this is something that actually anywhere in the world, if you live somewhere and there was a shortage of water or...
Yeah, this is something that can definitely be done at home. It's something, Ohio is very, very blessed with lots of open spaces. A lot of places don't have those though, so traditional agriculture kind of falls by the wayside. You need large tracts of land, you need large pieces of machinery. Aquaculture is capable of being done anywhere. If you have electricity, then you're capable of growing with aquaculture. And if you don't have electricity, they make solar panels, so you can still do it based off of that. There are aquaculture systems that have been set up in underground parking garages. There are aquaculture systems that are set up in people's sheds. Some people set them up just in their house for a small decorative piece, something like this.
Okay, and another benefit of aquaponics, if we're comparing it to farming, would be the chemicals in general, because with this, there's a chemical balance, but we're not adding anything to the water, like fertilizer.
That's very, very, very important. Aquaponics has, in a properly balanced system, zero chemical input. One of the biggest dangers affecting our water quality is fertilizer runoff and everything from mainstream agriculture. In 2019, we had one of the worst water quality years we've ever had, with massive runoff leading to cyanobacteria and everything growing in the lakes and everything. And aquaponics prevents that because it's a closed cell system. All of the water in the system stays in the system. We're not adding any chemicals. We're not changing anything. In fact, we're trying to replicate nature as closely as what we possibly can to create a closed loop ecosystem.
Okay, so this system would essentially use just the water that you have in the container. I think another problem, especially in other countries perhaps, or during a drought, if we didn't have enough water to water the plants, this uses 90% less water.
Yes, it uses substantially less. When we water our typical agriculture, all of the water goes down onto the plant. Some of it gets to the roots, some of it soaks down into the water column, a lot of it runs off.
Yeah, and it runs the nutrients off into the river, and then now we have an algae bloom.
Yeah, it's a huge, huge waste of resources. While aquaponics, you are going to lose a little bit through evaporation, but most of the water is staying completely in the system. So the plants are getting what they need, it's recycling back, and it doesn't have the massive spray area. It doesn't have that chance for evaporation, and so it stays in the system. It's a closed loop ecosystem.
All right, very cool. So that's what aquaponics is basically. You're raising fish, so you can harvest the fish, for dinner if you want, or
yeah.
or the plants. So here we have some lettuce and a strawberry, and we can talk more about those details here in a minute. But we're going to talk about how to make a small system that you could do in your house. So this is a demonstration, basically, and we have this was a candy jar.
Well, it's a perfect goldfish
right,
jar,
I mean,
isn't it?
I ate all the candy, so now we have goldfish in here, but it is essentially an aquaponics system. But you're going to show us one with a 5-gallon jug, and this is something you could try at home. This is a great learning experiment, especially if you're like for school kids or even big kids like me, I don't know, because I've learned so much about how important the balance of the ecosystem is and how just a little bit can really make a big difference.
Yeah, and in these systems, we're trying to almost replicate nature. I'm sure you've looked at a pond and seen the vibrant colors all around the pond's edge. Well, that's because the fish are in there and they're providing nutrients that are then processed by the bacteria and everything, and it feeds the plants around the edges. If you've ever seen a wetland or even like a delta where a river flows out, all of those places are extremely fertile, and we're trying to replicate that system. We're using the same things that they have. We're using fish, we're using bacteria, we're using a medium to grow, and we're trying to send those resources directly to our plants to create healthy plants that bloom faster, take up less water to grow, and are just as healthy. And you can eat the fish, not in a system like this. I don't think a goldfish would taste very good, but in a typical system that you would think about, you are looking at harvesting the fish and having them as well. So you can have your salad and your fish directly from your house.
Exactly, and it's all organic because you're not adding anything.
It is 100% organic.
Okay, so we're gonna try this at home, not in our candy jar.
Okay,
right?
okay.
We're gonna use this 5-gallon jug.
Okay, we're gonna use this 5-gallon jug.
So we have a 5-gallon jug. What else do we need?
Okay, so what I have here is just a typical 5-gallon water cooler jug, and I've taken and I've cut just about a third of it off.
All right.
And this is going to create a simple chop and flip constant flow system. So we already have a top area that we're going to use for our grow bed. We have the bottom area that we can put our fish in. They don't mind seeing the little, crystal water on the side. These work really good because they're very high quality plastic. They're going to last for forever. And by using this at home, we keep it out of the landfill as well.
Right, it's recycling your recycled containers.
So the first thing to do, of course, is just find a location about a third of the way down. I went to the first divot and cut your unit in half.
Okay.
That's going to leave you with your grow bed and your aquarium.
Right.
Now, roots don't like sunlight. They absolutely hate sunlight. It causes them to release a chemical that causes them to shrivel up and everything. So just to protect our roots, I've taken this out and just used a plastic bonding spray paint to paint the plastic. You can also use construction paper. You can use anything. You just don't want sunlight getting to the roots.
Okay.
So I've painted this. I've got it nice and dark and everything. So this.
Sorry.
Okay.
What's the lid?
Okay. So the lid is just the lid that comes on the plastic water bottles, and I just have this here to kind of limit the flow of water. By the lid comes with the pre-sized hole. We're going to be running a pump up through it, but we do want water to be able to drain. We don't want to pump up and then it to flow over the sides. We want it to come up into the grow media, water the expanded clay, and be able to go back down. So I've left the lid on to kind of hold the pipe and allow it to drain out.
Okay.
Okay. So after your system is cut, you want to check and make sure that you've got a good fit. I cut on the back of these just a simple notch because we will have cords and hoses going down in there, and that allows this to sit down on level and flush. So one of the things that aquaponics does require is a grow media. Plants still need something for their roots to grab onto. So the hydroponics and aquaponics world has come up with this really cool expanded clay pellets. And so this is just clay that's been rolled into balls, it's unfired, and it's got a lot of little micro pores in it. And that's actually going to be the house for the third part of our system. So we've got fish, we've got plants, now we're going to add the bacteria, hopefully taking up residence in these. So before I add this though, I'm going to go ahead and get my pump set up because that can sometimes be a little bit finicky.
Okay, wait. Tell me what kind of pump you're using.
Okay, so
Sorry
I'm just using, no, thank you so much. So I'm just using a standard aquarium submersible pump. A canister filter does work. You want to size the pump to get enough water flow. So for a small system like this, your standard aquarium pump will work great. If you're looking at a bigger system, you would want a bigger pump.
Okay, and this is a fountain pump. So it's not like a air stone, because on this one, I'm just clarifying because I had to understand it too. This pump is like an air stone bubbler type thing.
So your aquariums come with a water pump and an air pump. So this is basically a small compressor and it's blowing minute amount of air out, which we do want in our system too, because the fish are going to use the oxygen that's available in the water, but the plants are going to actually use the oxygen at night as well. During the day, you know, they suck in the carbon dioxide and they release good oxygen for all of us to breathe. Well, when they go to sleep at night, they kind of reverse that process, and they need oxygen during their sleep cycle to be able to process the complex starches into sugars for them to grow with.
So this one is just a regular...
This one is just
pump?
a water pump. So the size of it isn't so important for a small system like this. For a larger system, you want to start looking at, okay, how many gallons per hour does it do? How many gallons per minute? How much total volume of water? So if you had a 200-gallon system, this wouldn't be appropriate. But for a 3-gallon or 5-gallon system, this is going to be more than enough for everything we need. And then I've just got the hose, the piping to attach it to the pump, and I've attached an elbow with small holes so that the water doesn't come out all in one spot. It just kind of diverts it. And the more turbulence you put into the water, the more chances for oxygen to naturally get in it. So we're lowering the burden necessary for our air pump. Okay?
Got it.
Okay, so I'm going to take the hose, I'm going to slip it right down through that as far down into the system as what I can. Now, water itself will naturally climb. I don't know if you've ever been in like pants and gotten the bottom wet, and then before you know it, your knees are wet. Water has an effect where it can climb up to 12 inches. So having the pump lower down in the thing, it's still going to climb the sides of these expanded clay, and it's going to fully saturate all the roots. We don't want the roots to be sitting in water constantly, because then they don't have a chance to get outside oxygen. All of the oxygen they get comes from the water itself, which can lead to a bad environment for the fish. So we want water to go over the roots and then sink back down, and then go over the roots and sink back down. So we want a constant flow. So I'm just going to run the cord back through here.
Yep.
Okay. Now, when you get this expanded clay, it comes in very, very big bags and dry and everything. And you want to take and rinse this off, because as this hits each other, it breaks tiny pieces of clay off, and that can get into, it will get into the water as it runs through, and that can be bad for the fish's gills. So we want to allow them the best possibility we can to survive.
This stuff is important, by the way, because I have tried this a couple times with my goldfish bowl here.
Yeah.
And I used gravel. So gravel has a lot of limestone in it. The gravel, I just went outside, I was like, oh, it's like, it'll soak up the water because it's porous.
Yeah.
But there's too much
calcium carbonate.
Calcium carbonate.
Yeah, and calcium carbonate's the same thing you're going to find if you look on a box of cereal. Calcium carbonate is very, very common in our life. It fortifies a lot of things, but it does interfere with the chemical process that's going to be going on.
Right, and I know we're getting a little deep here in chemistry, but this is important. This is actually kind of the underlying lesson for me. The fascinating part is this balance. So with the calcium carbonate, there's too much calcium, which takes away the nitrates from the plants.
Yes. So it bonds to it and it creates a chemical reaction.
So we're going to explain as we go here. I know that's a lot of.
Yeah. So it comes down to a cycle. So what the fish are going to do is they're going to swim around. They're going to relax. They're going to produce waste, both solid waste and chemical waste. So fish release ammonia from their gills, part of their natural byprocess, just as we produce carbon dioxide. So the ammonia is going to get into the water, and if you've ever walked up to your fish bowl that didn't have a pump running and you've seen your fish floating, it's probably due to the water just being oversaturated and the fish not being able to breathe anymore.
And their poo, like if the water is not moving, then it becomes toxic to the fish. It will kill your fish. Yes,
it can. But we're going to try and prevent that by seeding our area, or not seeding, by providing plenty of biofiltration. So that's what we're essentially trying to do, is mimic that natural wetland area by having the bacteria grow in this, because there are bacteria that specifically process the ammonia and the nitrites that the fish produce and turn them into nitrates, which is what the plants need. So there are bacteria everywhere that do exactly what we need to do. They transfer the bad stuff into the good stuff, and we see that in nature all the time, and we're hoping to replicate that in this system.
Okay. So the byproduct from the fish is ammonia and nitrates. Nitrites. So, okay, let's pretend like we have our fish. We've put our pump in here, we've put our water in.
Okay.
Now we're going to put the right kind of pellets in, not gravel.
Yeah, and there's a test you can do if you take any gravel you get in Ohio. If you get it from, most commonly is going to be a limestone gravel. Ohio has a very, very rich limestone deposit. But if you wanted to take vinegar and pour it on your gravel to check it, it bubbles when it hits the calcium carbonate. Now, calcium carbonate is not a bad thing, but for this system, it is. Yes.
Sure, it throws it off balance. Okay, so what else?
So we've got our grow medium, okay, and we've thoroughly rinsed it.
Yep.
It's been washed off very well. So we've got our pump running through. Now we're going to introduce the grow media, however you would like.
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to take this little plant out right here while you have fun just pouring that right in there. Just make a huge mess. Okay, there you go. So we've got the grow media. Now, normally we would add a little bit more. You want it to be within about an inch, but for demonstration purposes, this is absolutely perfect. That's a beautiful piece of quartz. I'm gonna put that right there. Okay, so we've got our water, we've got our grow medium, and now we have a plant. If you've ever dug up a plant, there are thousands and thousands of silk thin hair fibers, and that's really what you're looking for. A plant grown in an aquaponics system produces a much finer root structure than a plant grown in the dirt, because it doesn't have to fight as many things to produce roots. They can just drop out the feed roots. Yeah, so we have this plant right here, and it's got, you see a couple of big janky roots coming off. When you start to look at an aquaponics plant, it will have a beautiful spider web thin looking set of roots, and that's because it just doesn't have to push through the dirt to get to a place where it can accept the nutrients. The nutrients are there.
Because it becomes easier for them to get, because it's right there and it's exactly the balance that they need.
Yes, and they don't have to put as much effort into producing strong root structures, so they can focus all of that directly into leafing out and greening. Lettuce, things like that are extremely productive in aquaponics system. From seed to harvest, 28 days. And there are aquaponic farms set up that cycle these and produce vast amounts of lettuce in areas that you wouldn't think farming is possible. Inner city, Chicago, Detroit, places like that have local farms inside old abandoned buildings that the city has worked with aquaponic startups and said, okay, well, we have a food desert here. We don't have the ability to get fresh food without shipping it from Colombia or other places. So if you're willing to farm, we'll give you the building. And there have been a lot of places who have taken advantage of some of those government incentives to fill the void that's missing.
Sure, I've seen, well, after researching more about aquaponics, I've seen like community centers, because it's a great learning experiment for kids. There's a school somewhere close by that has this.
Yeah.
Because you learn all about the fish and the plants. By the way, so we're talking about the balance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to have the right amount of plants.
Yes. Yeah.
So you were talking about starting. So they will grow faster in this system. If I have the plants in my garden, it takes quite a while for them to go to seed, depending on what kind it is. But you know, after a while, finally they'll bolt and the seeds will drop, and then they'll reseed themselves. But with this, the nutrients are more available, the plants grow faster, but it's important to keep that balance of the plants in balance with the whole system, because if you harvest all of the lettuce or the basil, whatever you have, then they're not taking the nitrites out of the system, which will harm your fish. So.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Erin. A lot of systems cycle. So say this is a mature plant coming up and we're getting ready to harvest it. I'm going to want a plant that's seedling stage. I'm also going to want a plant that's about halfway between seedling and harvesting stage. That way the input and output of the good chemicals that we're looking for stays stationary. If we were to harvest it all at one time, then the levels would spike, the fish would get sick, they would die, your whole system and would become ill, and you would have to start all over and say, okay, well, let me reintroduce the fish, let me build up the levels, and let me add the plants.
So starting seeds is actually very easy, and this is a plant that I grew in my garden. It's called a loofah sponge, and it's like a big gourd, and it takes up a lot of room in the garden, but they have big, beautiful yellow flowers, and a lot of people don't realize that the loofah sponge is a plant. They think maybe the sponge is a sea creature, which it is, but most of our loofah sponge that you're going to find around here is this plant. So I planted some loofah sponge last year.
Okay.
And then you just leave the gourd on there and it dries. So throughout the winter, it dried, and then I cut it into slices, and this is a perfect thing to, all you have to do is drop a seed right on there, put it in here, and as you can see, those little fine hairs, I don't know if they can see them on the camera, but it's starting to grow. Yeah,
and that is an excellent starting medium. A lot of aquaponics starting medium is sponge or something like that. It's quite often synthetic just because it's easier to produce. This is absolutely wonderful because it is all natural. It will allow the fine root hairs to have something to grab onto and kind of start with. Once they get bigger, that's not much of an issue, but it does kind of keep it all into one place. And then it's completely natural, organic, and you know, it is part of the system.
This system here kind of shows you a good progression, I guess, of if you're going to grow this type of a garden, then I have one that's just a seed, and I have one that's sprouting, and I have a few that are
coming up.
Coming up. They're a bit wilted today, sorry. This is lettuce, and then this one is a strawberry. And again, this is demonstration only. If I was to do this at my house. Okay, this light is also important for the plants.
Yeah, of course, any plant needs light. So I think you've got just a standard grow light there, which is what is most commonly used in large scale systems.
Exactly. So if you have a fish tank, it's probably putting off the UVB, it's replicating the sunshine, and that process calcium.
Yes, okay.
So, okay, where were we? We put our clay in, we've got our plant in. We know that we need to cycle our plants to keep that balance because they're taking the nitrates out from the fish.
Yeah, yes.
So the water comes up through this aquarium pump, and it comes out of this little elbow right here. Okay, these are porous and the water kind of circulates, but it's not, the roots are not sitting in water.
Correct, yeah. You don't want the roots constantly sitting in water because then they will eventually rot, and they don't have the ability to get that atmospheric oxygen that the plants need.
Okay, and we know we need to keep this in balance. So just briefly, without tell us about the magic. You mentioned the bacteria. Now, when people hear the word bacteria, they're like, ooh, bacteria.
Yeah, but everybody always thinks bacteria, ooh, nasty. No, bacteria is a crucial part of all life on Earth. We are covered in bacteria. There's bacteria all in us. There's bacteria everywhere. There's a specific type of bacteria that we're looking to cultivate. It's a nitrifying bacteria, and it is the workhorse of the system. It takes all of the waste, both gill and solid waste, and it tries to process it into the usable things.
So as it's drawing the fish water up, the bacteria changes it chemically so that it's not bad for the plant. In fact, the plants need it.
Yeah.
If you're not having this type of nitrogen, you're going to have to put chemicals or fertilizer or something on there anyway. So this is just a more organic system to use.
Yes. So the fish, we are going to have to introduce something to our ecosystem. We're going to have to introduce food. So the fish eat the food and produce waste. The waste that the fish produce is then eaten by the bacteria. And they produce a waste because when you eat something, there's always leftovers. So the waste from the bacteria is going to be eaten by our plants, and then the system's going to be complete when we harvest the plants and eat them.
So what happens is the water kind of is absorbed with the clay pellets. It's transformed. The plants take up the nitrates and all of these things, nitrogen, nitrates.
Ammonia and nitrites, yes.
Right. And then the water flows after the plants have absorbed the nitrates.
Yeah, so we're going to see that wicking effect once we start running water through this. We're going to see that wicking effect to where as long as these are a little bit damp, they're going to continue drawing that up. So the large quantity of water is going to bubble up. It's going to filter down through our biomedia. And then it's going to go back to the fish and continue the cycle.
But I guess what I'm saying is when it goes, the plants take out the toxic, it's not toxic, but it takes out this thing that the fish can't live in. It cleans it, and when the water goes back into the bowl, it's clean water.
Yes, yes, and we can check that. We can run tests on those. Anybody who's starting an aquaponics system should probably get just a basic water test kit, and these are super simple to use. You take water, you add the prescribed amount of chemical, you shake it up, and you color match, just like you did in kindergarten. You know, so anybody can do the water testing as long as what you can follow simple
Well,
instructions.
sure. If you have a fish tank, you should.
Yeah, if you have a fish tank, you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, usually it's just like the little paper strip. That's much easier.
Yeah.
This will tell you specifically nitrate or nitrite.
Yeah, and it also has the ammonium. And the ammonium is going to be one of the first things that's going to start really, really hurting your fish and show that there's a deficiency in the system. When the ammonia levels start to spike, it means your good bacteria either isn't working enough, so maybe it hasn't had a chance to fully grow and fill out the system yet, or you've overstocked the system.
So could I put one of these things on top of my fish tank?
You could easily put one of these on top of your fish tank. You do want to watch out for the amount of fish to the grow medium. So a system like this is great for a couple of goldfish. Typically, what you want to shoot for is about 10 gallons of water per pound of fish. So say you're growing fish that you want to eat. You're going to need a lot more water than this. So that aquarium here at the Nature Center is 25, 35 gallons. So we'd be able to put about 3 pounds of fish in there, and it would have enough water to allow the buffer space for the biomedia to be filtered out and everything.
Got it.
Got it?
I think.
Yeah.
So if you do this like on a bigger scale in your backyard, then you put the fish in. Using the type of fish is important, just like the type of plants. So bluegill, catfish are all great because they're hardy. They can live in this type of a system and it won't hurt them.
Yeah, most definitely. You want to match your system to the fish. So a rainbow trout is an excellent fish. Everybody loves rainbow trout. You know, it's so amazing. But it requires such a depth of water and such colder water. They're not prime for aquaponics system unless you have a very large or very strictly maintained, such as you put water heaters and water coolers into the system to maintain that perfect. Easy fish, carp, goldfish, catfish, bluegill, perch, things like that work very, very, very well in the system.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for us. Yes.
Okay.
And what else? Anything else? I mean, that's kind of a really good overview. Did we miss anything?
Well, you touched on cycling out the plants, which is important because we are trying to create that balance, and you can't have a balance if you suddenly go and take everything out of one side of the system. That's going to throw everything off. You touched on that. We talked about the good bacteria. We can talk about the commercially available simple system. If cutting a 5-gallon bottle in half is too much for some people, there are available systems. We have something like this that you can find at an aquaponics store. So basically it's the exact same thing. We have our aquarium bucket, we have our grow hood, and then if you see on the side, there's room for the pump on the inside and everything to come up. Now you can get these at specialty stores for aquaponics or hydroponics or Amazon.
Or you can make one. I have a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, you can very, very easily make them. Very, very easily. Pump, oxygen, fish, and the clay pellets.
And seeds.
And seeds. Well, I guess you do have to have plants for an ecosystem.
But it's pretty neat how it all works together. It's all stuff that we have right here. It's stuff that I have in my garden. So I have, lettuce, and I have an herb garden, and it would be nice to be able to have it right there where I can easily pick it. It's fresh and
Yeah, and
all year around.
Yeah, aquaponics is actually very, very good. The culture that has grown up alongside aquaponics, the people tend to be recycle, reduce, reuse, recycle minded. So a common system you'll see is either out of old food grade barrels or old IBC intermediate bulk containers that people have used. So they're reusing other things that would enter the waste stream, so landfills or the process of recycling. They're reusing those materials to keep it out, and they're using it to house their fish food, so their Friday night fish fry, and their salads and their vegetable produce as well.
Yeah, so this is something that you could try at home and probably use stuff that you have on hand already or easily available. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it is very much, I'm sure, I am almost positive that most people have things that they could make a beginner system out of at their house. The only catcher might be the pump, but those are pretty easy to find too. A lot of us have had goldfish that, you know.
Exactly. So thank you so much. I have learned a lot today, and we hope you try this at home. It's a great learning experiment, especially for ecology, because you're learning about the balance between the plants and the water and how important that is and how you can recycle it through. You have everything on hand. Amazing.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being on the show today. Was there anything else?
No, thank you very much for having me, and I hope some people experiment and try a system, and maybe they go up to a bigger system once they see how fulfilling it is to grow really great fish and really great food.
Exactly, and there's more information online. So that's it for today's show. If you'd like more information, you can check us out on our website at ohiostateparks.gov, or we'll see you on the trails.